All right, everybody, you guys know what it is. It's the one and the only, the American Cholo podcast, broadcasting live and direct to you from North Hollywood, California. My name is Gil, and I am the American Cholo. Today is July 15th. Isn't that right, Mr. Chris?
That's right.
There you go. Chris is up and running. It's another warm day out here in the San Fernando Valley, North Hollywood to be specific. And today, it's my pleasure, man. We have a gentleman here. He is running for Congressional Seat 18, which is San Benito, Santa Cruz, Monterey, and Santa Clara. Please give a warm welcome to Mr. Peter Hernandez.
How you doing, Gil? Good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Peter, thank you for coming. You and your whole beautiful family came through.
We did. We come together always.
Great vibe, man. Great vibe. So we've been talking back and forth. Let's talk a little bit about where the district you're running for Congress is.
So it's in the central coast of California. Basically, it's right smack dab in Monterey, San Benito, Santa Cruz counties. Monterey is probably the center part of the district. The northern part is Santa Clara County. So it's pretty unique because it's very connected to the Silicon Valley.
Okay.
But that's only because after the census 2020, the line shifted. This district used to be 17% white, or I'm sorry, 17% Hispanic. Now it's officially 65% Hispanic.
Wow. Why so much of a flip?
That's a very good question. You'd have to ask the supposed independent redistricting commission, which is California driven, right? And California crazy is yeah. You have to ask them. But it's supposed to be nonpartisan, but the reality is definitely was gerrymandered to be very much a Hispanic district, which, you know, I'm ready.
But doesn't that somewhat help your vote, do you think, if you got more Hispanics?
It does. Well, here's the deal. I was a sitting county supervisor when that happened. I actually was asked to speak up on behalf of the county. We did a press conference in Gonzales with Monterey County supervisors to argue against the maps, because technically speaking, Monterey County, San Benito, we're always one unified district, congressional district off the coast, Carmel Valley also. But in general, it was a lot more consistent because we were, you know, San Benito County, for those who don't know, was pretty much came out of Monterey County.
Okay.
We weren't a county until Monterey basically separated from Monterey. But still, it's agricultural. It's very much rural, very consistent. Now all of a sudden, we're part of an urban area, Santa Clara County. Santa Clara County is a different demographic. In actually looking at the district, you start to see some big distinctions. Like, not only is it increased Hispanic, but it's increased lower income. It's also increased lower poverty rate, or I'm sorry, higher poverty rate, and also lower ability to purchase a home right now with $80,000, the average income or average.
Right, can afford.
Yeah, and you know, almost $800,000 in, you know.
In light of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump this last Saturday, are you having any hesitation for running to Congress?
No, it's a conviction. It's public service, you know. Yeah, there's crazy folks out there, you know, but I mean, life is risk, you know, and if at the end of the day, what man would I be if I didn't do what was right for not just my family, but for my community, right?
Where were you at when you first found out about the assassination attempt?
I was working. I was doing my thing, working out in Monterey region. I'm sorry, in Morgan Hill area, and yeah, I had gotten a text. I think it was a Truth Social post that actually said, yeah, attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Watched it. It just disgusted me. I mean, basically, and I did a live actually at that moment, and my live was just pretty clear. You know, not only do we have to get behind President Trump, we have to realize that when they attack him, they're attacking us.
Absolutely.
It's coming our way, whether we like it or not. And actually, which I think we'll get into the details a little bit, it's already been happening. Mm-hmm. You know, the reality is Hispanics being 40% of the state, we're also the least, you know, we have the lower turnout rates, even with registration rates. We still have a lower registration rate, but of those have lower turnout. So at the end of the day, this state, although majority Hispanic, which is the largest demographic in the state, it's not representative of our values, right? It's far from it.
Yes, that was actually a question I have down the line over here. Why is there so little Latino representation in California politics?
I would say because, and this is to a certain extent not necessarily race-driven, or at least I can't create that assumption necessarily, but I do see the consistency in Democrat politics. And one of them, and one huge reality is they depend on the low information voter. They want you to vote but they don't want you to know what you're voting for.
Correct.
And I can give a lot of references to that. I mean, one simple one is the Healthy Communities and Safe Schools Act. It was a proposition, I believe it was 46. Ultimately, it was supposed to create this safer environment, lower recidivism rates. Long and short, it did the opposite. You know, now all of a sudden you have no cash bail. Now all of a sudden you have
47, I think it was, right?
Oh, it's 47.
Yeah, 47.
Regardless, I mean, it just put us in an unsafe position when in reality it was sold to us as something that it was not.
But that's the crazy part about it, because like you and I, we can look at this thing, and when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, that's going to bring crime up. There is no offensive buts about it.
But you have to read the bill. You know it.
But they're great. When I say they, I say the Democratic Party, especially in California, as selling you a bill. When you say yes, it actually means no. When you say no, it actually means yes.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, they're constant, the way that they frame things, right? Like even when they mention like what happened January 6th, insurrection, right? Or you hear things about, Black Lives Matter as if no other race matters,
right?
Right. It's all these half truths, half selling points. And their only goal, and you've seen this, right? From the Maxine Waters to the Chuck Schumers of the world, all they do is basically make you very emotional about the issue.
Yes.
And they don't, if you think about it, if you really want to get advanced as civil society, right, for us to actually work together, regardless of us agreeing, then we need to have cool heads, right?
Yeah.
We need to have you need to actually think about what we're talking about, so we come up with a solution that it doesn't require guns or doesn't require attacking each other. That's going to happen when you're actually talking.
But it's very difficult, especially trying to speak with liberals on certain topics. It's like, I don't think they can defend them. So a lot of times it's just like screaming and name calling.
100%.
Like with us, I can literally get a lot of people who are independent to Republicans, right wing, and they'll sit there and say, yeah, I'll come in here and I'll discuss my points and I'll tell you why I believe the thing I believe.
That's right.
But when it comes to many liberals, they're only going to go to platforms that agree with them. That way they can all keep agreeing with each other. But in reality, I think a lot of times as Latino, we vote against our interests.
They live in an echo chamber. And you're right, we vote against our interests, not intentionally. I mean, I've been in office twice. I've served as a school board member 4 years. I served 4 years on the county board of supervisors. Actually, was the chair of the board of supervisors in my last year.
Yeah,
I've learned.
What did that entail? That job, the board of supervisors.
So the county board of supervisors actually was the ultimate authority in every county, obviously, where we have decisions from obviously a budget. We are a pass-through agency. A lot of them are general law. Without getting into the weeds, we administrate funds and we manage resources. So we manage our roads. We pay for health and human services. But some of these funds come from the state. So the reality is we have ultimate authority, and I would say a simple one that a lot of people probably can connect with was when we shut down our county. That was the board of supervisors that made that vote.
Okay.
And I did make that vote in the initial, right? No one knew what was going on. Actually, I still remember the call when I got a call watching the Super Bowl with my brother at his home, and all of a sudden I get the call that we had a individual that had just passed supposedly from COVID, right? That's what we had been told. So it was a panic. We got together, had an emergency meeting, basically had a public health officer that guided us, right? And this is the weeds element that I want my Latino community to understand, my Hispanic community, that, you have a guy who has a medical degree telling us ultimately what to do, not framing it in any way as if we have a choice, even though we do have a choice. According to Article 1 of the Constitution, we are the legislative body of the local county. That means we make the ultimate decision. Even if the doctor said we need to do this, we could say no if we wanted to.
Right.
A lot of people say that's not true. Just read your Constitution. It's not that hard. Regardless, at the end of the day, that's when it comes down to what the public health officer did. That's why I was known for speaking up. I challenged them. I said, look, I just want clarity in the room. It seems like you guys are just basically framing this argument as if we don't have a choice. We need to mask up. We need to get vaccinated. And you need to stay home. All of a sudden, fast forward, the mask didn't really work. The vaccine actually has negative consequences. A lot of people are suffering from them. And then you also have basically the situation where people were sent home, and going home actually was the worst thing you could have done, because you send people home, that's where the virus spreads. That's just without a doubt. Plenty of doctors are actually, and you're actually having them say that they regret those decisions that were made.
So how long was your county shut down for?
We were shut down the whole time, But after a month after those shutdowns, I said no more. You could look it up. There was an article that I wrote. It was literally what I said as a county supervisor on the dais. I titled the article, "To be Unified, We Need an Honest Conversation," because I turned those comments into an article since I knew there was going to be an uproar. After I challenged the guy, he ended up quitting 2 hours later. So that created, but here's the thing. I'm a God-fearing man. I knew that silence has a negative consequence.
Right.
When no one talks about the issues, you don't understand the problem. You don't understand how to solve the problem.
Right.
Plain language. So I challenged the guy because I wanted a conversation. Explain to me how this makes sense. How shutting someone down, how telling them they can't get a job or they can't pay for their health insurance, which they're supposed to be able to prevent this disease from spreading, to have, even preventative care, right? Which all of a sudden that went down big time for 2 years.
Yeah,
People weren't doing medical screenings, cancer screenings. There was such a negative consequence, and I knew those things were going to happen. So I was just trying to rationalize the process. The Board of Supervisors basically, and you can even check it out on the videos in our, everything's publicly recorded. They shut down my mic a couple times when I was challenging this process. I was like, this is crazy to me. It feels like almost like a, Twilight Zone kind of situation.
Yeah. Did you get much backlash from your peers there that were working with you?
I got a lot of backlash. They were like, Peter, what do you, I still remember the chair, Mark Medina, who basically said, Peter, are you a doctor? Do you have
one of those?
And I was like, wait, so are you telling me that I can only think when I have a credential? Is that what you're telling me? Right? It's like, look, you got to go toe to toe with these folks. And it's not even, again, this is not me trying to do anything. I don't want to put people's lives in danger. If there was something very obvious, but there was a lot of things that weren't obvious, very hard to understand. Even today, people debate some of these issues. And all I know is the less the people know, the worse off we're going to be.
Now, let's retract a little bit on you, Peter. Let's talk about, where you were actually born and raised at, my man.
I was born and raised in Hollister, California. Hazel Hawkins. I'm a first-generation Mexican-American, proud Mexicano. My mom used to always call me Pocho, My mom and dad were both born in Mexico. My mom from San Rafael, Estado de Mexico. My dad from Chalco, Estado de Mexico. So, Spanish was technically my first language, even though I spoke English. But language was the language. Spanish was the language where my mom would only allow that language to be spoken in my home.
Okay.
Because she was very adamant that I would preserve my culture.
Nice.
Where I came from. So, we went to Mexico every year. I missed a lot of school. Actually had a hard time in school because of the fact, not just that, but I struggled in school in general. But I missed a lot of school because we were always in Mexico.
Okay, so you pretty much came here and started with nothing.
Started with nothing. My mom worked the fields 30 years.
Wow.
She actually worked under Cesar Chavez. She told me. It was pretty cool.
So you know what it is like when I say my stuff, and I'm like, dude, America is the place to be, man.
100%.
That's where you get the dream, and you can make it happen. I think the difference here in most countries, in most countries, you can work 30 years like your mom and not have nothing to show for it.
That's right. Here,
if you work hard and you play by the rules, you can have some good stuff happening. As you have your family, you have your wife, you have your kids.
Yep.
So I think that's what you represent to a lot of people.
I want to. Here's the thing. I don't consider myself unique in the sense that others can't have it. I actually consider myself part of the rule, not the exception.
Nice.
I believe in the Latino community. I know they're capable. If you think about politics, and I hate to say it, the partisanship that happens in politics, the reality is you listen to these people long enough, right? Both sides, the sentiments. It's very much like a tribal war, right? They're going at each other's throats. But the clarity that I'm hearing from the Democrat side is I only believe in the government to be able to administer resources, and the Republican, or at least I would say, I believe in the people to administer their own resources, right? We should not be the ones to control. They take regulation as control. Me as a conservative, as a Christian, as a proud, hardworking, believe in the dignity of work, Latino, I believe the people are the ones that are the best administering their own resources. But my job, instead of making, regulation to control them, our regulation should be to create a standard, making things regular,
Absolutely.
Creating a standard that all can live by, minimal impact on them, but maximizing a standardization where everybody can agree with the same rules.
Absolutely. Now, when did you come up with, hey, I'm going to run for Congress?
It was honestly, I prayed. I wasn't even thinking about it, Gil. I was actually sitting county supervisor. Even our elections officer thought, man, you're crazy, Peter. You were sitting pretty inside your supervisor seat, earning a wage. And I said, look, for me, representation is not about a wage or a position. So long and short, once I saw that the room was silent as far as dialogue and debate, everybody was just literally rubber stamping these decisions. I was like, man, these guys aren't willing to go to bat. Like, I want to go toe to toe with somebody. Let's actually have a conversation. That's what representation is about. You're dialogue and debating, making it ultimately an articulate argument on what is best for your community and figuring out what it means, a process that advances that goal.
Now, what is, let's say, your top 2 or 3 things that you would like to see changed?
Well, one for sure is eliminating stock investing. I think you need to take away the income ultimately incentive for elected officials that go in with $174,000 income and all of a sudden come out.
They're not going to like you in there.
They won't. No, they won't. Well, here's the thing. Here's my commitment. This is honestly,
right.
This is my honest conviction and commitment. I only want to do 2 years. I'm not saying I'm going to stop at 2 years. I'm definitely not going to be a lifer. I do not want to die like Nancy. I don't want to become Dianne Feinstein in office or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. I want to be in there just long enough to hand off the baton to somebody else. Politics should not be a lifestyle. Politics should be a part of your life because you're engaged in the civic process and you want to multiply that effect. That means you can't be the one in power for a long time. You got to hand off that power. Really, the ultimate, I think, would be if you think about what it means for our country to actually truly prosper, the best opportunity is that you have citizens taking up their authority, right? Because if you think about the term citizen, it actually means co-ruler. You're actually ruling alongside folks, right? It's a Greek term. Okay. All that being said is the ultimate outcome is for the whole community in that district to understand the process, be engaged, vote their conscience, getting people into office that are actually going to do the things that are going to benefit their district. You would see a prosperous nation, an educated nation, and ultimately, I think, a civil nation.
I follow what you're saying, but I think to try to go in there and clear out that swamp, because you have both parties that don't want to get rid of the stock.
That's right.
Changing.
100%. I agree. Both parties are broken. That's the problem, right? I mean, but here's the thing. Me and you are business owners. I think a simple example is in business, you could either be a business of one and get very limited outcome, right? I've said, my wife has said in our business, if we really want to be successful, we have to multiply ourselves. We have to multiply our goals, our passion, right? What we produce that becomes a benefit to our consumer. So that means we got to be able to pass that power and that understanding what it means to be a business owner. We don't want servants. We want leaders in our team, right? We want to pass on that baton. So if we truly want to be successful, you got to grow that influence, that understanding, and ultimately that passion. I do believe people are passionate enough because you give them purpose at that point.
Of course. So as far as your community, what would you like to change in your community as a congressman?
As far as my district, I want to see upward mobility. I think that means we have to replace ultimately a sense of servitude and welfare mindset and replace it with, like the value of work, getting paid what you're worth, the preservation of wealth, right? You shouldn't be able to have wealth taxes. You should be able to, pass on your home. I think personally, a simple example, and I've thought about this a lot. If you think about the power structure that's happening in the big urban cities, technically speaking, that's where all the money goes because that's also the power structure, right? Sacramento, LA County, you're thinking about San Francisco, all these big power centers because of the base, right? And it's funny how they're mostly blue. And you look at the red in the state of California, the red is all in the rural areas.
Yes.
So I think it would be awesome if there was a way to anchor individual property rights, restricting any kind of influence on taxation, restricting influence on, on anything having to do with you being someone to be able to come in and force you out of your home, whether it's eminent domain because they're trying to bulldoze a road through there, right? There's been such an abuse of the Constitution where they use the general welfare clause to mean they can all of a sudden create a general welfare benefit for anything they decide they come up with an idea of. And the reality is that's not what it was intended for. There's certain things that should be inalienable. If you think about the original, and this is getting a little historical.
No, let's do it.
But the Declaration of Independence talks, life, liberty, and happiness. The original rendition was life, liberty, and property. Why was that? Because if you want to anchor rights, you want to take away the titles of nobility, right? What happened in Great Britain in the kingdoms, right? You need kingdoms. That means you need servants. To a certain extent, you need at least some kind of a team that's willing to support your goals, right? And if you're the king and you want to be a bad king, right, you need to make sure you have your nobles in place that are taking control of the people that are under them, right? Because they have land, they have title, right? Forget the nobles. Actually, our Constitution specifically says there's no titles of nobility. All that being said is the sovereigns need to be the people. There needs to be something that protects them from government overreach.
What is your take on, you have a lot of these billion and trillion dollar industries now, and some are foreign owned. They're buying properties like in Las Vegas. I saw this new one a few months ago. Come live in your dream home, rent. It's not even, so now it's not even own or rent to own. Now it's just, they're making a society where we're just going to be renters. Do you find a problem with that?
100%. We need homeowners. I want everybody to have an opportunity to own a home. And I want them to have protections from anything that overreaches basically their rights to their home. The more think about home ownership. You look at neighborhoods. This is not, to a certain extent, if I know people understand this, that's again, my sentiment is I believe that people, you share with them the reality. I believe they'll understand, and all of a sudden they get excited because they'll realize my goal is to represent them. But when it comes to home ownership, you look at established communities. You look at a neighborhood where people have lived there for 20 years, 30 years, right? And then you have more neighbors that have lived there a long time. Those communities are safer. Actually, their property values go up because crime goes down, right? So there's just this constant gradual benefit of establishing a community where people have stability. A business needs stability. You need long-term stability. How do you project wealth? How do you project management of your business, growing your business, if there's constant changes in your infrastructure, in your business model, in your costs, all those things that impact your ability to grow?
Would you ever be inclined to vote yes on a bill that would limit ownership of properties to non-citizens, like kind of how Mexico does it in many other states?
No, you need to be a citizen. Citizen needs to mean something. I mean, the founders were very intentional also. If you read like the Federalist Papers, they actually talk about the dangers of factions. Factions by default are kind of like single issue voters, right? They make that the whole issue of life about one thing.
Right.
You do that, you become dangerous because then you'll basically violate other things for the sake of that one thing.
Right.
So, you know, if you need to basically add value to citizenship, that means when you come here, you don't just get you don't get the benefit of citizenship if you're not willing to protect it. I think the simple answer is you can't have a right without a duty to preserve that right. If you can't have both, you really don't have a right. You just have a way to beat someone else up.
How do we fight that? Because I saw also in Arizona, you had, I think, the Saudi family was having like 4,000 acres, some outrageous amount of land. They're growing their feed for their horses and sending back, but yet they're telling the farmers in Arizona, hey, you can't use so much water. How do we get back to where we're fighting for our people and not just looking out for people who are putting money in politicians' pockets?
That's a really good point. I mean, it's funny how right now everything is about urbanization. Stack them and pack them, even our climate change laws, all that kind of stuff is trying to reduce the carbon footprint. And it's funny how they could never define what that even means. You know, here's the thing. Politics is dirty. They want ambiguity, which is confusion. They want confusion because confusion is hard for anybody to try to fight against because they don't understand it. And that's the reality when it comes to like water rights. I actually I literally have been praying and thinking about a policy decision. I brought this forward actually in the primary when we had a candidate forum where it was a quasi debate. We volleyed some questions. One of the things that it was talking about is resource management. That was the question in our county. Because we have issues, right? We're a small city of Hollister, right next to Santa Clara County, where we're getting a lot of people moving in and we can't manage our own resources. So I came up with a policy idea, or I would say God gave me one. And I called it the Preserve Rural America Act. They value property where, if you think about it, it's a piece of, prior to it being a property on there, it was a piece of dirt. When it's dirt, it's worth less. You put a house on it, all of a sudden it goes up a ton.
Right.
You should actually value property. You should have the ability to value resources. If your county has those resources and someone is benefiting from those resources, you should be able to add value to those resources and say, look, we have rights over these resources because they're in our county, and by default, we should have protections of those resources. You shouldn't be able to say to California farmers. You have to go buy water from out of state, which is going to cost you a ton of money.
Right.
All you're doing, why is it that our own food, the healthiest food, is the most expensive?
Yes.
Why is that? Because the regulations, I mean, everybody says we need to have regulations. Fine. What is too much regulations? I mean, at the end of the day, at a certain point, how much can your business handle where they keep taking from you, keep putting burdens on you, even if it's not a cost, it's all of a sudden a new thing you have to do. You have to pay staff to do it. You're adding cost. You're minimizing your profitability. You're no longer a business.
I definitely agree with you to a point with that. As a small business owner, I remember, and we were talking this a little bit off air, talking about when I'm looking at on Thursdays, I'm like, man, I got to pay money tomorrow. And then I got to look for payroll. And then you start looking at your first payrolls and you're like, wait a minute, I'm paying whatever taxes that this guy's getting, I'm paying taxes on it.
Yep.
So you feel it as a small business owner, but I think a lot of those regulations are also in place. And let's talk a little bit about this. I don't know if you heard about Boeing during the whole Biden thing that was going on, that news cycle. Boeing is pleading guilty to falsifying records on their airplanes and pretty much being accountable for 237 people dying. But all they're doing is paying a $250 million fine, which is absolutely nothing. Nobody's going to jail. At what point do we get politicians in here that are going to say, nah, man, you killed somebody. Somebody needs to go to jail for this. Because right now, the justice system is, it's blind, but if it sees money, it'll see through that bandana. This guy's got money. I'm going to take care of him. How do we change that?
That's true. I mean, to a certain extent, you'd have to change the lobbying laws, the laws that basically govern lobbying, right? Because right now, technically speaking, they've loosened them and they've defined them according to First Amendment freedom of speech, right? Because money, when you're extending money to someone, you're saying, hey, I'm trying to basically share with them who I am, right? And I'm supporting them. So I'm backing them with money. But lobbying's
low key bribing.
And to a certain extent, and I was just going to say that. The reality is the only way you can say it's not is the moment that you basically have elected officials that are voting where regardless of who's giving them money, they're still moving forward with policy decisions that might be anti the very people that donated money to them. Right? But that's a sticky situation. It's a little hard. At the end of the day, there needs to be basically protections to make sure that the interests of the people come first, right? So there's criminal law. There should be things when it comes to, and I'm not an attorney, so I can't necessarily get too much into the weeds, but I can tell you is there should be definitely protections for the citizens, right? There should be liability. That's why you have insurance. The liability protections should make sure that they also protect the individuals for the sake of not just their profits, but for the sake of making sure people don't get sick or die.
Okay, now let's pivot over to immigration. Immigration is definitely a hot topic. Immigration is a divisive topic. Where do you stand as far as the border and how the policies were 3 months ago?
It's funny how they always try to complicate things, the politicians in the room, right? Because those that don't want to solve the problem, right? Mm-hmm. That happened under Obama, if you think about it, when they promised supposedly fixing DACA, right? Or they created DACA, but DACA was just a leverage tool just to get Obama reelected. Because once the election happened, people all of a sudden realized that there was an expiration date to DACA. Regardless, the point is immigration by default means is we're creating a boundary or we're defining that there is a boundary around our country that makes us a sovereign nation, right? Because we can't be like Saudi Arabia. We can't be like other countries, right? We have our rules. We have our rule of law. We have our constitution. Very different sentiment, right? So my point is when it comes down to our nation is the sovereignty of our border by default gives you access to come in, granted you understand the rules of the game, and granted you're willing to respect them. That's the simple and short. It's just like your home. There's sovereignty around your home. What is the defining line around your home? Your easement, right? The property line. That property line defines that that's where you live. This is Gil's home. Gil sets the rules to his home. If he wants to be a good neighbor, then he can basically, which is what I would imagine you would do as much as I would do the same. Hey, I want to help you. I can see you're destitute, you're struggling, you have a need, but you got to come in through my front door. Oh, and by the way, when you come in through my front door, I want to know that you're a good guy. You're not going to here to hurt my wife or my kids, my daughter. I want to make sure that I get to know who you are. I need to understand who you are. What are your intentions? How long are you going to be here? Are you planning to be a permanent resident? Do you want to be part of the familia? or are you here to just take advantage of us, right? There's got to be a process. That's the whole thing when it comes to immigration policy.
Do you think that Joe Biden dropped the ball with the immigration policies that he had in place?
He didn't drop the ball. He grabbed the bomb and he threw it. Like his goal had nothing to do with saving our country or preserving the interest of our country. He wants to see a globalist nation. Let's be real. That's the reality, right? Globalization is centralization of power. If you look at the consistency, again, this is why this is important, because you pay attention to the connecting fibers of these decisions, you all of a sudden are like, wow, this makes total sense. They want to see basically this movement where the economy is not based off of an American economy, right? We're devaluing our dollar. That's been happening.
Yes.
But they want to see basically this economy that's driven more by a foreign interest, right? Why is it that we have roundabouts in our nation, European roundabouts, right? You know, they're not called that, but they are roundabouts. Why? They're modeled after Europe. There's a lot of things that we do in our country that all of a sudden start to socialize. And we're trying to, it's the boiling frog effect, right? You know, at first it was just, you know, a certain percentage, right? You had an expectation that someone's going to receive welfare benefits, right? You know, there's right to work laws, or there was laws that required you to make sure that you had to go back to work after a certain period of time. All that's slowly gone away. Now all of a sudden, just for being technically speaking, and think about this reality, Gil, homeless individuals, illegal immigrants, both have technically what me and you have. They have more rights than we do. They have access to healthcare. Yeah. They have access to insurance, right? They get a phone, they get clothes, they get fed. They go to, high. We couldn't afford some of the hotels that get put up in New York City.
There's a hotel right here.
How is that true? Like all of a sudden, up is down and down is up.
I don't know. I've been trying to figure this out myself, especially out here in California, and it's almost like a conspiracy thing where they're trying to destroy these cities. I don't know why, but to me, I finally figured out in California, it seems like they're trying to push the middle class out, where eventually it'll be a place where you have people who are very wealthy and people who are not, and that's right. It seems like that's the way they want to have it.
What happened in COVID? When I was a county supervisor, I lived it and I saw it. I paid attention to the details, the fine print. You saw the biggest wealth transfer in our nation. What happened basically from the small business economy, California had 40,000 businesses shut down, 20,000 to never come back. Right now, to open up a business is too hard. Commercial properties are going down in value. It's hard for you. So you have all these issues happening, and you're 100% right. I'm a student of the game. I don't know if you've ever heard of Victor Davis Hanson's, but he has a book called The Dying Citizen. I recommend people read it. Pretty profound. But the general sentiment is, when you have co-rulers, right, like the Greek city-states, you basically are part of the process. You understand. You're educated. You're paying attention. You know the details, right? Like, hey, I know this fine print. What are you doing, right? So you know how to not get work, right?
The game.
You understand the game. You don't know. You know how not to get played. Well, guess what? Now you're too busy. You're working really hard. You can barely afford your bills. You have no time for politics. How do you know what policies to read? Where do you even find these policies, right? The committee process where the sausage is made. No one, or very, very few people know that. Part of my goal has less to do about, I want to get elected, but it has less to do about that and has more to do about handing off that power back to people. When I say power back, it's not just making decisions that's going to decrease your cost. It's like, I want you to know what I understand. Because when there's more of us, then there's less power basically trying to control us.
You're trying to expose and show the game, and that's pretty much what American Cholo is here.
100%.
We're trying to show people that it's like anything else in business. You first walk in there, like when I first walked in, I was digging ditches. Didn't know how to swing a hammer. And little by little, you start understanding, you start elevations, you start going with the easements of properties and height variance and all that stuff. But you don't learn that off the top. And I think that's what's lacking in our communities with Latinos is there's nobody really teaching us out there. And the only thing we know is JFK. So my grandma loved the Democrats, and I'm going to vote Democrat, and I'm going to continue voting Democrats because if you vote Republican, you're a racist. So what do you say to somebody like that who will say something like that? Will say that you're a racist because you're going Republican?
I'll say, don't talk to me. I don't answer a fool in his folly. And that's not just me. That's the Bible. It's in there. Read it. I mean, at the end of the day, like, look, if you want to talk stupid, then find someone else. But if you actually want to have a conversation, let's talk. I respect everybody. I don't care who you are, how you're dressed. I've told my kids when they grew up, I cared more about the heart that they had and the heart to do the right thing than I cared about the wealth in their pocket. So I said, look, if you're a garbage man, but you're an honorable man, if you're a good husband, if you're faithful to your wife, if you take care of your kids and know what it means to pass on to them what you didn't have, then you're the man that I believe that I'm proud to raise.
You're a rich man at heart.
100%. That's what I want. That's what I want. Because at the end of the day, you can produce your own wealth. If you have that kind of a capacity of self-restraint and work hard, you will get somewhere. You will. It's not even if, it's when.
How frustrating is it for you? You know, you're a business owner and you know what it is to, you know, try to make that money and pay your bills. And you have a state like California that if it was a business, it would be bankrupt right now. When you have them spending $20 billion on homelessness, that they can't show anything that actually came out positive about it. No. You know, what would you be able to do with $20 billion in the state of California?
Wow. Well, 20 billion, you give me $20 billion, I'll be looking for opportunity. I'll be looking for team players. I'll be looking for people that are ready to hand off that baton. You know, there's two things the Hispanic community needs. They need access to information, right? That by default, understanding and wisdom. They need access to money. They need access to capital, right? Someone that invests in them and says, look, if you're willing to understand what it is to run a business, I'm going to invest in you. You're going to build this thing. You're going to generate wealth. Mm-hmm. I might get a percentage out of that, but you're still going to get the majority of it. And you're going to be not only by default, right? You're going to have that ability to create your own destiny.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you're going to be a better asset to society because you're going to be a productive citizen. You're going to have a good family. You're going to know what it means. How do you protect something that you have, you know, there's no value to it, right? That's why rental is what, you know, these folks want, because you have no value in a property. Rental properties fall apart.
Right. Not yours.
They're harder to take care of because they're not yours. But once you have ownership over it, you're very protective of it.
Absolutely right. So, Chris, let's put the number up there real quick. Take some phone calls from Mr. Hernandez. Next one. What is your take on men and women's sports and men and women's prisons?
Again, this is one of those things that I actually wrote an article. I want people to look it up.
Okay.
I titled it "Wokeism is not a Latino value." It was actually hosted on Town Hall. It was hosted on Real Clear Politics for a while. It was a top article. Newt Gingrich 360 picked it up also. But in that article, I basically talk about the reality of this gender confusion. Confusion sells, right? What did?
Thank you, Chris.
I think he was a campaign manager for Barack Obama. He said, you can't let a good tragedy go to waste, right?
Oh, yes.
Right? So you take advantage of people, right? That's what you do. That's what a drug dealer does, right? You figure out a way to take advantage of people. You know, that's what dirty politics is. So at the end of the day, you want the term Latino, which is male, Latina, which is female. You take both the last letter in those words and you put an X in it.
That's what it's doing.
Because you're eliminating what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. My mom used to tell me, hablan cristiano, cabrón. She used to tell me that in my house because she wanted me to understand that my language is a beautiful language. It's very specific, very intentional. Actually, it's technically a lot clearer than the English language.
Yes.
So that's something to be proud of. Why is it so specific? Because it's easier to understand. You know by default how to organize your thoughts, how to critically think, how to challenge, you know, dialogue and debate. You become a pretty, you know, well-versed person, and it opens up doors for you. Confusion by default does the opposite. So to me, that's why I'm passionate when it comes down to this. You know, they're trying to do this gender confusion stuff. No, if you're a dude, you're gonna hurt my daughter, right? There's no way to me, here's the thing. Where are all the men out there that are not speaking up about this? Yeah. Like, are you serious? What happened? Your testosterone level dropped? Are you no longer an alpha male? Like, what's wrong with you? Like,
they shame you is what it is. And people are so afraid to be shamed. People think that they're going to lose their job. But also, it's the females that need to stand up. And when I say the female needs to stand up, I say, like, when there is events let's say a swimming event, you've got a guy in there, don't show up. If you got volleyball, you have a guy in there, no, refuse to play until they finally say, hey, these women are going to play. But it is insanity. Out here in California, I'm sure you saw the news about a month ago, male inmate ended up raping one of the, it's a guy.
A female inmate in prison.
Yes.
Yeah, and but again, the division, it just creates opportunity. People don't think about that, right? You want to lean towards, you think that the best of intentions in people. But when you live on the streets, I hate to say it, but you got to have one eye looking the opposite direction.
Absolutely.
You got to be careful, right? So you got to know what it means to have street sense just as much as you have, school sense or whatever, right? So, but when it comes down to all this craziness that they're doing, they're just intentionally trying to divide us. And that division creates opportunity. It really does. Think about the reality that if they wrote a bill that actually solved the problem, you have less need for the people that drive that solution.
Yes.
If you eliminated poverty, you wouldn't need programs anymore. They'd go away. Technically, I mean, why is it that when I was on the school board, I was blown away. Every year they had a new program for the same problem. Every year it seemed like, right? This all these different programs, and they obviously came with funding, they came with money, and they manipulate the truth. I mean, I was looking up a stat just today where there was a big debate about the size of government growing. It was Ron DeSantis was interviewed by, I think it was Maria Bartiromo, and he says 50%, government's officially now 50% higher than it was since 2019. So the size of government has grown. That assumes that people are assuming they attacked him. They said, hey, are you saying that that's how big government has, that's how much agencies we have and employees? At the end of the day, he only had a small segment to answer the question. But the reality is when you think about the size and scope of government, it's not just about people. You can have less people. It's about how much control you have over someone, right? Now you're telling them what size of tub they have, right? Now you're telling them basically, what bathroom they can use. You have to have money behind all this. You have to have people managing this. You have to have, when I was a county supervisor and we were shutting people down, we had to fund a complaint line where the people can snitch on each other. I obviously voted against it. It was like, whoa, are we in Stasi Russia? Like, well, this is crazy.
How do you feel about California new law that everything has to be electrical? Like, we're doing a job in the Palisades right now. The whole house is down except for the pool. The owner thought that they were going to be able to put back the gas line. They're like, the inspector's like, no, there is no gas going into this building. And they're like, no, but we have a little pool. They're like, there's no gas going into, gas has been completely taken out of the equation in California.
There's books written about this, which we could talk about forever, but it's just this elite mindset that they know better. They don't live in the real world, right? The consequences that they dole out have nothing to do with their lived reality because they're not looking to carry the burdens that you're carrying.
Right.
And that's just the reality. But to your point, if they're eliminating, I'm all for increasing efficiency. That's the market. The market itself drives it, right? If you're a business owner, you're in energy, you want to come up with ways to make it cleaner, to become more efficient. Why? Because you're going to keep getting paid, right? You're going to create a better product. It's going to be healthier for the environment. Businesses are that way. But again, the Democrat leadership mindset is more control means, more opportunity for them to do whatever they want. But when it comes down to energy, climate change, this whole mantra has more to do about control. You can prove it with the water issue. You can prove it with solar panels wouldn't even exist in California or the country for that matter if they weren't subsidized. I know this because I actually used to work for a solar company. You get tax credits, right? So technically speaking, a $40,000 or $20,000 solar system, the only way that you can drop it down to something that's feasible for the average everyday person is you give them a $5,000, whatever, $10,000 tax credit rebate, right? The electric cars, the Chevy Volts. I remember when they had a $7,500 tax rebate. Right. So that's why. I mean, and it's funny. Here's the thing. Again, this is why I think these conversations are so important. The power grid itself, 80% of the grid demands fossil fuel energy. Yet you're plugging it in with an electric car.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. I seen the Tesla ones in Las Vegas. They got a big old diesel engine running it to charge your car. So,
and the toxic element of the battery. I mean, people don't talk about it enough. The pre-production element of that is more pollution than it is to just use cleaner fossil. And here's the reality: when we were shut down, I still remember Gavin Newsom was basically pushing like, "Hey, we need to shut down basically all these oil leases and stuff." We were importing foreign oil, actually from Russia.
You've got some Venezuela.
Yeah, it's crazy. Venezuela, that's right. I talked to State Senator Shannon Grove. It was crazy. We had big carriers off the side of off the coast of California, but at the end of the day, dirtier oil. What happened? All of a sudden, I'm being told, "Oh yeah, actually, the American life cycle has shrank by 3 years." Why? Because our air is officially dirtier than it was before.
What do you feel, or can you even help if you were in Congress to try to get some money from the feds to make some water reservoirs out here? Because I'm hearing again that we're supposed to be in a water shortage and gonna start charging us more money. I'm like, wait a minute. Well, we just had record number of rain, but it all went back to the ocean.
100%. So I mentioned it earlier. I called it the Preserve Rural America Act. It not only pushes to add more value to rural regions, but it also pushes to make sure you keep more of your money, and it comes up with greater leveraging opportunities where we bypass the state. I don't know if most people know, but a lot of funds that the locals get from the federal government have to go through the state, basically. So technically speaking, not only is there administrative costs, but they write their own rules that say, okay, now we're going to give it to you, even though it's from the feds, we're going to give it to you, but here's the strings attached, right? So they add their own strings once they dole it out to you. So I would be right out of the gate. That one of my goals would be is to bypass the state and say, nope. If you're going to minimize the benefit of this funding, I want direct funding for projects like that, increasing water supply, lowering costs, right? You know, coming up with greater opportunities to fix your roads. Right now we have SB1 funds, which is a California Senate Bill 1, which is supposed to earmark funds for every county to be able to use for fixing their own roads. We can't even fix our own roads. I sat in a mobility partnership meeting as a county supervisor where it was a regional basically meeting where there was elected officials from every region. Basically, I think it included Santa Clara County and it included Monterey County. And in that conversation, they openly admitted that the state doesn't want to fix roads. Why? Because of carbon emissions. The more cars on the road, the more emissions. By default, that means it's dirtier. We don't want people driving, Peter. So we're going to incent. Here's the thing.
Yes.
And they basically said the quiet part out loud. You know what's the best way to decrease and curb bad habits? You punish them. You fine them. Right? Let's add a cost to them, make it so hard for them to drive there. Maybe they'll take a train, even if there doesn't want to exist, right?
But they want to drive. That's the crazy part.
And they'll drive their SUVs and you name it.
Well,
they'll be flying their planes, right?
It's like Gavin saying stay at home during COVID, and he was over at the restaurant with all his buddies.
Yep, that's right. It's 100%.
And also, do you think that when they do all these diet roads, because I'm in the driving the streets of LA every day, right? When I go to work, and I see more and more like some nice 3-lane highways that kind of float real nice in the morning. No, man, they're making a bike lane. They're making a bike. They're taking a bike, and there's even 2 lanes. They're making a bike lane, and 95% of the time, there's nobody on the bike on those things.
Yep. It's not feasible. It's not practicable. It's not honestly locally vetted. These are all top-down decisions. That's the problem. Most of these decisions are top-down. So think about it. You have less people in the room, right? There's another scripture in the Bible that says there's wisdom in the counsel of many. If you're getting a lot of information from different resources that are professionals, you probably have a better outcome because at least you're starting to vet, enough understanding to know exactly what to do that's actually going to have a positive outcome. They've vetted the process. But if you're depending on a few elites, I still remember going to Caltrans. We had this turbo roundabout, second one ever built in the state. It was built in San Benito County. The whole community backlash. Why? Because in our region, we are basically the conduit between Interstate 5, right? Because, and there's still kind of a whole thing about that. But regardless, I knew that there was a lot of semi-truck traffic because we're an agricultural region.
Right.
You have a bunch of, trucks that are delivering your vegetables. So I went with our COG director, Council of Governments. They deal with the infrastructure and roads. I sat on COG and we traveled to Sacramento. We met with the Caltrans director, the main guy from the state. Nice gentleman, and that's the way it always works. That's the hard part about politics is you meet these people. They're very nice, clean-shaven. They talk very nice, very super polite, right? They're gangsters, right? So at the end of the day, we gave them our piece, right? They'll hear us out. They probably have a whole box checking exercise. Let's hear this guy, let him talk, whatever, right? Give him his 2 cents. We were done. And they said, supervisor, we have professionals that do this. We know what we're doing. It'll be good. You'll be fine. And I'm like, I felt like someone was patting me in the head, like I was a dog or something, right? I mean, I'm like, dude, you might as well just slap me upside the face because that's exactly how I felt. Went back to my community, obviously pretty upset. But honestly, this is the thing. This is why I believe in not just my Hispanic community, but my American people is we don't get even. We come up with better solutions. We'll fight. We'll fight in a different way.
Somebody asked me to ask you this question. And it was a good question, I believe. Second Amendment rights for ex-felons. I have a felony on my record, and I can't legally own any weapons. Would you ever be inclined to have, some kind of, program that after, let's say 10 years, somebody can show they've been a law-abiding citizen taking care of business, because I mean, that is what you should use to protect your home. And it kind of, to me, it's unfortunate, you know, yeah, I made a mistake. I paid for my crime. It's been over 20 some years. Why can't somebody like myself, who's doing all the right things now, be able to be a full-blown citizen? Because to me, I almost feel like I'm not a full-blown citizen because I can't protect my family that way.
Yeah. Well, I honestly haven't had this conversation with a lot of Republicans, so I haven't vetted it. But my own personal convictions is I do believe that we would definitely agree with that. Second Amendment needs to be preserved by more than less. And Second Amendment, that's under the guise or the assumption that it's all about self-preservation, which, you know, I consider self-preservation is also preserving my own interests, which is my family, right? Taking care of them, protecting them. So the short answer is yes. Is if they've been good citizens, right? If they haven't been committing crimes, you can see that their lifestyles change. There's easy ways to measure that. Then yeah, give them an opportunity. You know, what more redemptive? Which is funny how the Democrat left will definitely say that they're all about the little people or the minority or the displaced or you name it. They come up with all these terms for people that they really don't care about. But they at the end of the day, I believe if we really want to protect the Second Amendment, we need to increase people's rights. Rights. You know, ultimately their rights to bear arms. We need to increase that capacity. Granted that it's under the guise that they're doing the right things.
All right, cool. I want to thank Moises Carrera for giving out 10 memberships. Also, we're speaking with Peter Hernandez. He's running for congressional seat. Is it 18? 18. If you guys want to call 747-279-8109 and put him through the hot seat, or just maybe say hi, this is your opportunity. Now let me ask you another one. The incumbent that's in the seat right now, how long has she been there?
She's been there, so she's technically a one-term incumbent because of the census, but she's been there 30 years.
Ooh.
She's a lifer. Yeah, she's officially a lifer. Right? She's got a lot of respect up in that house.
What are, let's say, one of the biggest differences between you and her as far as policy?
Everything. You know, she'll give you something as long as she can control you. I mean, that's probably the simple and short. Look at all of her policies that she's pushed forward. I've done homework on a lot of her policies. Farm Worker Modernization Act, right? It's under the assumption she wants to help farm workers or increase labor opportunity participation. But in reality, it's an amnesty bill, right? So she wants to create amnesty. And at the same time, she's trying to give them more rights than us. Like I said, under that bill, it actually said that they would have rights to sue the farmers. You know, labor relations. I mean, ultimately, if they can unionize a box of rocks, they will unionize. And, and I'm not saying being part of a union is bad, but now it's becoming a battering ram, right? Depending on the union you're talking about. And granted, right, to clear the air, there's good unions and there's not so good unions. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, her policy prescriptions had everything to do about control.
So she's been there for 31 years.
Yep.
And how do you intend to try to take her down? Because, I mean, she's got to have a powerful, machine behind her.
She does. She only wins because the Hispanic vote doesn't show up.
Well, I saw your numbers. Your numbers were not too shabby when you guys were first going up to see who would be the runner-up. You were maybe like 10, 15,000 below her, but for her being an incumbent, those are pretty good numbers.
It was good. Yeah, it was closer to like 20,000. But regardless, you're right. It was 51.
Well, compared with the rest of the people that were in there.
Yeah. No, I was definitely really close to her. But it's just, you have to work really hard to get people to show up. My passion is the voice of the district is technically majority Hispanic. That means that voice should be speaking.
Yes.
But it's not, because they're not voting. If they voted, they would be speaking. Too many people think, and it's funny because, again, with the complexity and ambiguity, right, I keep trying to create these consistencies. The Voter Choice Act, which is a California law, all it does is increase mail-in balloting, right? They've done more to supposedly create more opportunity to vote, but really it's made it harder to catch cheaters. So at the end of the day, more people have less trust in voting process, so therefore they don't vote. So even if you want to vote for me, you probably won't, because you're like, Peter's not going to win. He doesn't have a chance. The system is rigged. I don't want to vote, right?
Now, are you going around knocking on doors? What are you doing to try to get the message out there that, hey, I'm running for this seat. Let's do this.
We're 100%. Yeah, we actually canvassed the primary in the 2024 race, right? Just before March, we were canvassing. Right now, we really expect to ramp it up. I know that the RNC is going to start doling out some canvassers basically and get out the vote and voter registration. I'm trying to piggyback off of that, but I also have my own team. Last cycle in 22 when I ran, you know, I'm a fighter. We fought in 22. It was a hard slog, 2 years running, now running again another 2 years. Technically, these congressional races are 2-year races. So this is 4 years me running for the same seat. So I'm a hard worker. I'm putting the effort in. Bottom line is, and now we're going to try to double what I did in 22 as far as voters. I mean, volunteers, we had 84 volunteers. Wow. I want to hit closer to 200.
So how do you find time? You know, you're a business owner, you got a wife and kids, you got young kids at that, and now you're doing this. How do you find time for all this energy?
I pray. I try to eat healthy. I try to exercise. And yeah, just trust God. I mean, ultimately, because, you know, passion sells at the end of the day. When people see it, you know, I actually say is passion beats education, you know, or talent. Because at the end of the day, if you have the heart, if you want to keep pushing, you will eventually get there. And so that's kind of the heart that I've had. You know, I've come from very little to nothing, Gil. I barely graduated high school, 1.6 GPA.
Oh, man.
So I'm not coming in here touting some elite status. I graduated from, summa cum laude, some kind of big university or whatever. I didn't. To a certain extent, I think that was a blessing because I didn't become woke. But, you know, not that all did, but regardless, that's the point is I have the passion. Like you said, when we first started.
Look over there. Look over there and tell the camera why they should vote for you, man. Talk to them.
So when I first started and I ran for school board, not knowing what I was doing, not knowing exactly how to get there, I just knew that I wanted representation. I knew enough about my Constitution and my rights as a citizen of this country, I would argue, that are consistent with my citizenship in heaven. That means you can't have a right without a duty to protect it. You got to be willing to fight for it. I knew the impact of what it means to have influence because I've seen it around me. And so at the end of the day, I wanted to understand what it meant to actually increase representation and opportunity in my district. I ran for school board because I wanted to learn the game. I started at the bottom. I'm hardworking, served 4 years, served another 4 years on the Board of Supervisors, actually became the chair of the Board of Supervisors, even nominated by a Democrat majority board. I'm pretty proud of that. Because I know how to debate, dialogue, I'm respectful. Nonetheless, now my goal is to represent you in Congress. It really is, the passion that I have is prosperity for the people that I love, for my community, for my family. If my neighbor's not doing good, then by default, he's not only going to be in a bad place, but his kids might be, his neighbors might be. Before you know it, we're all, you know, there's increases in potential crime, and just bad things happen when people aren't engaged and they don't care about each other. So that's why I'm running for Congress. And I mean, ultimately, because I know that at the local level, when I saw rubber stampers, I'm like, man, I don't play that game. Firsthand. Yeah. So I want to get into a position where I actually have an impact. And I'm just asking for 2 years. So if you give me 2 years, I want to fight for you for 2 years. I'm not going to be the guy sitting in the back. I'm going to basically go to the front if I have to wrestle to get into the front and say, look, my district needs representation. And if you have the Kevin McCarthy's of the world and these folks basically trying to attack me, go after me and get me out of there, go ahead, because I'm building a team behind me to make sure that there's someone else to replace me.
That's right.
That's what it's going to take.
Now the hats. Talk to me about the hats real quick.
So legalize freedom. I brought forward an informed consent resolution. This was a really profound part of my life, to be honest, very personal to me. So when I served on the Board of Supervisors, I brought forward an informed consent resolution. This was when the vaccine mandates were coming down. My goal was to, you know, for those that don't know, there's a law called the EUA, Emergency Use Authorization Law. Required two things. One is for the people to become informed, right? It's our duty to inform them of what we were giving them because it was considered experimental. And two is they needed to have a right to say no. Big debate, brought 200 people forward. It didn't pass. I actually got support from Democrats and Republicans. Long and short, it didn't pass, but I came home really proud knowing that I fought. Even if I didn't win, I knew the conversation was officially started. And that's when my wheels were turning. Okay. It's not even about just getting the win on the dais. It's about getting the win where the people know what you're doing and they understand what you're doing and they become passionate about getting involved. Put on this hat when I got home. My wife had bought it for me. And ultimately, because we ended up turning it into a campaign hat. I actually put my logo on the side. It says,
that's nice.
Peter Hernandez for Congress. Because really it is about legalizing freedom, right? Freedom means something to those that actually know what know what the blessings of those freedoms are. Absolutely. I want to fight to protect them.
Absolutely. And I'm extremely glad that you came. So we had this conversation, Peter. It was
fun.
great. Now, the last thing I need you to do is let people know where they can find you as far as social media, the websites where they can donate and all that, where they can actually, donate their time even.
Amen. HernandezForCongress.com is the website. Everything at Hernandez for Congress on all my social medias. Go on to my website. Please sign up. Give us your name and your address, right? Your phone number. Connect with us, right? Here's the thing. You want to have an ongoing conversation with me. It won't end here. When you sign up, we'll be contacting you. We'll send you emails. We'll let you know what we're doing. Give you all the excitement of Congressional District 18. You might be part of a winning team once 2024 I get inaugurated. God bless you guys.
Now we got one phone call real quick come in. Let's see who's coming in. Hotline. Who's this?
I'm enjoying the episode today. The interview is fucking good.
Thank you.
I liked how you asked him the question about the Second Amendment rights for felons. And everything else you guys are talking about, awesome. We just need better infrastructure in our state.
Absolutely,
God
brother.
bless you.
You got a question for the man? And you say hi real quick.
I was just saying hi, but
Okay.
Thanks,
yeah, I
brother.
don't really got a question. You answered my question for me.
Perfect.
So,
Hey, appreciate the support, brother.
God
all right,
bless you.
and good luck, Congressman.
Thank
Future
you.
Congressman.
God
Congressman.
bless you, sir. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so we're calling out here. You go give us the thing again, Chris. San Benito, Monterey, Santa Cruz, Santa Clara, stand up. The way you get change in your community is for voting at it. You can't just sit back, watch TV, watch YouTube all day without voting. We have a majority in California, but we're not using it. We need representation.
Right.
And this man is taking the time out of his life to try to represent you. So you should just take 5 minutes out of your life, park next to the thing, and go and vote real quick, man.
Amen.
And
Amen.
with that, we're out, Peter. I appreciate you coming out, my
Know
man.
the game, guys. The game is a real game in politics. Know how to play it. I know how to play it. I want to teach you. You be a part of it. We could be part of the winning team. God bless you.
Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about, buddy.